Hi, Kevin Martin here with this admissions review module for an applicant to the College of Liberal Arts and Liberal Arts Honors in Plan 2 at UT Austin for fall 2019. In this admissions review module, I'll walk you through what the reviewer sees. I'll provide insights as to what might be going through their reviewer's mind as they are reading the biographical, resume, essay, submissions of this student, and at the very end I will share my thoughts on whether they gained admission or not to regular admissions and honors, and also their probabilities of receiving their personal achievement scores on that scale of 1 to 6, the 6 being the highest. So the first thing that stands out is that the student is from Mount Pleasant, Texas, which is actually in East Texas. It's a school that I'm familiar with. It is a relatively low-income school, as is typical for a lot of small towns in Texas. It's not a particularly college-going environment, but it is notable that they come from a highly educated family who's middle to upper middle class. And so there's an interesting mix here of attending a school in a non-college going community that might have less resources than their suburban counterparts, yet it seems like, at least at first glance, that they come from a stable family. And so we'll see if we learn a little bit more about their environment as we go through their essays and resume. Okay, so the first thing that stands out is they're number 1 in their class, so they graduated valedictorian. They also have a very strong SAT, particularly coming from a more rural community. So that just, from at first glance, stands out to me as remarkable, that they're obviously doing the most that they can academically in their environment, taking probably some of the only AP classes that are available to them as seniors. Let's take a look at their extracurricular commitments. So the first thing that stands out is that they were captain starting freshman year of the speech and debate team. So I'm sure there's probably a bit of a story there, and they've obviously continued their commitments over time. They created their own volunteering program where they were the founder and then president of Cosmo Scholars. They also have a leadership position in National Honor Society, so they're going a little bit above and beyond what might be required rather than just merely being inducted into NHS. They've participated as a manager in the band, and so they've got a well-rounded set of experiences here. A little bit more about their volunteering activities with the band, with their tutoring program at the local county fair. As a younger student, they're also a mentor and kind of a help transition coordinator for some younger students entering their high school. So my first impression here is that they're a thoughtful student who's active and involved in their community and their high school. This is reinforced by the fact that they've won a few different city and school awards for community service, teacher acknowledgement. They've gotten some outstanding youth awards, some different awards and accomplishments. They were the first student in their school history to qualify for the Texas Forensic Association TFA state tournament. And they worked in the counseling office at their school, at the counseling office in their community. And they've also worked on the family farm, so that's interesting. And particularly so with their essay A, so let's take a look. I think this essay is one that's worth reading from start to finish. I won't read it out loud, but I encourage you to pause the video and read it because it's just a really entertaining story. It starts from the very beginning about kind of an entertaining and perhaps like slightly scary moment of a fire that's broken out at home. They immediately begin talking about their identity and context and what they think about living on the farm, where it seems like they've spent a lot of their lives after relocating to Oklahoma and then into Texas. And so we immediately have some rich context that will set up the rest of their application and provide some of that nuance and illustrations as to what's going on in their home and in their background. They tell a thoughtful story about a growing moment with their father. And, this is a very real, authentic, sincere essay. It's entertaining. It's interesting. It's definitely not boring. I think this is certainly going to be one of the most interesting essays that the reviewer would have read during that application cycle. We also get a thoughtful discussion of Mom and how she seems to take in all of the animals that wander onto their property, including ducks and peacocks and even some donkeys. And then they elaborate and develop on that theme further by telling a specific story about a baby calf that their mom brought into the house. And the student came home and saw the calf on the front porch, or literally next to the fireplace. And so they sort of talk about living on the farm and perhaps how maybe it isn't the life that they would have chosen for themselves, and maybe they're a bit more bookish, perhaps. And so again, this is an essay with a lot of personality here, and I think it's something that would stand out to the reviewers. Let's take a look at their first choice short answer for psychology. So they begin with the discussion of how their mother was impacted by a condition, by a variety of conditions, as well as mental health encounters. They talk about a student that they mentored briefly through PALS and elaborate on that some. They tie things back together with their own confession and discussion of living with generalized anxiety disorder and how they've encountered those symptoms and also the therapy involved. And it seems like that these life experiences very much inform their interests in studying psychology. We have a thoughtful discussion of how they might see themselves following graduation and kind of considering different possibilities for what a degree in psychology or perhaps a PhD might offer to them. And so it's pretty clear immediately that this is a student who's a mental health advocate and someone who will contribute to UT classroom discussions and also for kind of the general sanity keeping of the 40 acres. So for their leadership short answer, they discuss how they've committed themselves to debate and how they have shown leadership by being a teen mom. So I think this is a nice approach because on their resume, it's obvious that they've achieved at a high level and they've found success, but it seems like that they're also a collaborator and a role player and perhaps winning isn't everything to the student, and how they have lend a helping hand and even sort of helped out some of their students who may have forgotten things and helped keep things organized. And certainly as a captain for 4 years, it's pretty clear that they have helped keep the team together. And additionally, they've reinforced that point again with their commitments in band. And so we have some great dimensions here to their character and personality that elaborate on their resume and provide context to their commitments. So in this diversity short answer, they discuss directly attending a Title I school where a lot of their students may not have access to the academic resources to succeed in high school or at the college level, and also how some of them come from homes that may not be the most supportive. And so they saw this issue and they did something about it. They created their own tutoring program that they've expanded to different campuses. They've coordinated with the Mount Pleasant ISD officials to try and raise awareness for their program, perhaps get some resources, get the word out. They've recruited other students to join their efforts, and hopefully this is a program that will continue after they enroll at their university. And so they tie things together neatly by stating explicitly how they hope to also provide tutoring services to friends in need or perhaps contribute their efforts to a pre-existing organization on UT Austin's campus. And so this is a really thoughtful essay about how the environment in which they come from and some issues they've identified and how they're playing their part to alleviate some of the inequality and provide some access to educational resources. So immediately we see their speech and debate accomplishments. They've placed at a variety of competitions. They were, again, the first team to qualify. They made it actually all the way to UIL state and policy, which is also very impressive. They've placed in the top 3 at a variety of local competitions. They've also more expansion on their leadership, their tutoring program, and then National Honor Society, and specific things that they've done there as secretary. And they're also a guest writer for the newspaper, and they've had a few part-time jobs, of course, helping out at the family farm. One of my favorite lines of all time is wrestling calves, chasing dogs, and feeding all the animals is just part of the day when you work on the family farm. I think might be one of my favorite lines of any college resume I've ever seen. You have a variety of awards and achievements, mostly at the local level, perhaps at the county level. And again, this just rounds out that the student is a very thoughtful person, thoughtful young woman who's maximized the resources in her environment and is really well balanced between her academic and extracurricular service commitments, as well as her commitment to diversity. So I'll elaborate here on the analysis. So I think they're a perfect example of someone who demonstrates diversity just based on their own biography by living in a more rural environment at a high school with less resources that has a majority of students on free and reduced lunch, which is what Title I means. I think their greatest strength is certainly their essays. They're informative, interesting, thoughtful, and entertaining. And it's pretty obvious to me that they've made the most of their resources in their environment. This is a great example of how a reviewer shouldn't compare what a student does in an environment, especially a rural community or perhaps an urban community where there just aren't going to be the same kinds of resources if you're from an upper middle class family attending a private school in the suburbs with access to internships and undergraduate research and a lot of these things that some high school students have the opportunity to do. And so the criteria that reviewers are looking at is, did this student overcome adversity? have they maximized the resources in the environment, and would they add to UT classrooms and the 40 acres in general. And to me, it's pretty obvious that they have I think gone above and beyond. If I were reviewing this file, I think this is an easy 6. I think they earned a perfect score. I think it's possible that if a reviewer didn't really understand the environment in which they are going to school, might award them a 5 because the resume doesn't have those national, international level competitions. It doesn't have some of these research experiences that some of the other students who might receive 6s. I think the student is a perfect example of how there are many different kinds of 6s. There are some who just have these rock star below ULA resume and essays, but this is an applicant who's just very thoughtful. They're personable. It's clear that they're mature, sincere, and authentic, and they just seem like a very caring and it's the sort of student you could very easily imagine having a pleasant conversation with. So for me, I think it's I would have definitely give them a 6. I think it's possible that maybe they got a 5. If there were 2 reviewers reviewing this application, it's likely that maybe they got a 5 or a 5.5 or a 6. It is notable, and I was actually really disappointed that neither liberal arts honors nor Plan 2 extended this applicant an offer. I think being valedictorian at a more rural high school that doesn't have a history of sending students to UT Austin or into UT honors programs, of scoring a 1400, with obviously they're a very talented writer, they're conscientious and nuanced. This was one of the more dispiriting outcomes I saw in the admissions process for fall 2019. I think if I were on a committee reviewing this application, or even a scholarship, they're actually attending another university on nearly a full ride scholarship, and I think it's pretty clear that if there's a committee of people, there's definitely 1 or 2 people on that committee that would be advocating for this student. I would be curious what happened with the honors process, but I thought they were close to being a sure thing. Maybe their resume was a little too thin, but I thought that they'd be a shoo-in. I think both LAH and Plan 2 both missed out on an outstanding, incredible, and conscientious student. But that's just how the college admissions process is sometimes. You can't really predict these outcomes, particularly for highly selective honors programs.